Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm Garrett Horner. This is stage 14 of the 25 Giro d'Italia. Today's stage, it's one for the sprinters. You start looking at the profile at 195 kilometers, I'll call it 120 miles in length, and you look at it closely, it's super flat throughout most of the stage. 40 kilometers to go. They have a small category 4 climb with a little bump, then they drop down. 27 kilometers to go, though, they're going to start getting into the town. That's where it could be a little bit of chaos when you're doing grand tours, especially the Giro d'Italia. They love technical, twisty, tights, roundabouts, all kinds of furniture that could cause some problems. So it's a stage that if you're racing for the general classification, you're wearing the pink jersey, your name's Del Toro, you got to always stay at the front of the peloton. And if you're top 10 in the general classification, or if you want to win the Giro d'Italia, you got to stay at the front of the peloton for sure when you come into 27 kilometers to go, because it's a crazy circuit that is 14 kilometers long, but they have 2 climbs. They'll enter the circuit, they'll hit the first climb, Savior, and it's about 700 meters, 7.7%, so it's a stick of a climb, but 700 meters long. They'll summit with about 20 kilometers to go. They'll come around, then they'll go back up the climb again, right around 8 kilometers to go. They'll summit just after that, drop down the descent, and it's still a little lumpy, bumpy, twisty, tight, technical, cobble streets, lefts, rights, center islands, everything to get in the way, all the way into the finish of the stage. So when I said it's going to be a sprinter stage, well, of course it's a sprinter stage, because you look at it, it's 700 meters, that's 7.7%. But we're on stage 14 of the Giro d'Italia. So let's see what happens when the racing starts proper to see what the sprinter teams are interested in doing. Well, right away we see in the neutral section, they come to a stop. They do some posing of the picture there with the Pinarello bike. Then they get going and the peloton starts attacking right away. Now, 5 kilometers into the stage. Remember, 195 kilometer stage, 190 kilometers ago, we see a group of 10 riders going up the road. We see the big guy, Wout van Aert, in there. We see Quick Step is represented with 2 riders in there when another rider bridges across. And we see Alpecin de Koenig have multiple numbers up there. So when you start looking at this group and you throw in some AG2R riders in this front group, and you see Casper Asgreen from EF Education in this group, if you got 3 sprinter teams in this front group, maybe the sprinter teams aren't interested in making today a sprint. I don't know, but it's looking pretty interesting right now. And you go back to the peloton and attacks happen and teams pulling to try to bring these guys back, about 10, 11 riders up there that are working well together the whole time. They'll stay out there for about 15 kilometers and then they'll get wrapped up by this last huge effort from Team Ineos as they wrap them up 15 kilometers later. Now, right as they're getting wrapped up, Casper Asgreen, EF Education, is going to throw an attack. He's got some company up the road because we're going to see Clement Davi. We're going to see Bardiani up there for Martin Marcellucci. We're going to see the Pulte rider up there. That's Micro Maestri. And then we see Louis Menkes up there. That 5 riders. Louis Menkes is Intermarché. We go back to the peloton and you'd think this would be it. 5 guys going up the road. Got some power up there with Casper Asgreen. But Louis Menkes is a little bit smaller climber type guy for Intermarché. So you start seeing more attacks coming from Dries de Bont. And Intermarché is covering Dries de Bont, pulling him back. And then Taco van der Hoorn's throwing in attacks. I think he threw in the attack even for Dries de Bont, if I remember correctly. But Taco van der Hoorn has been throwing in attacks left, right, and center. And we go up to the front group and look at 5. Intermarché are in this front group with Louis Menkes. Okay, Louis Menkes is a climber, but he's in the front group. Intermarché are attacking like crazy back there. And then finally, after Intermarché get kind of under control and stopped attacking, we start seeing these 5 riders build up a gap. But we go back to the peloton. Gap's only getting up to about a minute and a half, minute and 45, and the peloton start chasing. We look at Visma bike at the front, Alpecin de Koenig at the front. So now you start thinking, oh, okay, this is a field sprint stage, no doubt about it. Okay, maybe those 10, 11 guys attacking that had 3, 4 sprinter teams in that group, maybe that just happened and evolved that way. But right now, everything's status quo. 5 riders in the front group, and then we see Louis Menkes drop out of the front group, so now we got 4. Louis Menkes, if we see the replay, he's talking to his director sportif there. He's hand gesturing a little bit. Finally, they come to the agreement that Louis Menkes is going to drop out. Louis Menkes, you're going to drop out? Because if I rewind the film, I can see you pulling on the front with these 4 guys, and I can see Taco van der Hoorn attacking like crazy back there. Now you're just going to drop out? This is ridiculous. This is knuckleheadism right here at its best. I don't care what the reason is for dropping out. I know he's not a climber, or excuse me, I know he's not a sprinter. I know he's not a classic specialist. I know he likes to ride the back of the peloton, but if you like to ride the back of the peloton and you're in break of 4, that was 5 when you were there, that's a pretty safe place to be. Okay, he drops out, 4 guys there. Still status quo with the two teams back there of Alpecin, De Koenig, Visma bike, holding these guys on a tight leash, under 2 minutes the whole time. Then it starts raining. We see, of course, guys are putting their jackets on back there. And I want to point out one thing about the new rain jackets. They're so super narrow and tight that they're hard to get on. So when you see Michael Storer using his teeth to get his hand in there, you can understand how complicated it is. And finally, Michael Storer from Two Door Cycling decides it's safer just to pull over the side of the road and put your jacket on. Much safer to do that. Good planning right there from Michael Storer so he doesn't crash. Now we go up and start looking at these 4 riders in the front, minus Louis Menkes, the knucklehead. Or is it? I don't know. Maybe he does something magical in tomorrow's more mountainous stage here because it looks pretty interesting. But at this moment, I don't know if that was a smart move. But we start looking at the 4 riders up front. We're coming in about 40 kilometers to go. That's where I told you the first KOM starts. So we see, of course, from EF Education, Casper Asgreen's throwing down on the pedals. And we see Clement David get dropped out of the back of this group. Now we're left with 3 riders, and they're holding, I'll call it about a minute gap right now. As we go back and look at the peloton, it got nervous as we were coming into about 50 kilometers ago. Now we're hitting this climb. Ineos are on the front. Bora Hansgrohe are near it. Visma bike still on the front. And then Ineos start getting all frisky. They start driving on the front. But then next thing you know, they gap off their own teammate back there. I think it's Arensman in second that opens up the gap, and his teammate's drilling it. And then finally, the teammate on the front looks back. Maybe Josh Tarling it is, if I remember correctly. He looks back over his shoulder and realizes that he's dropped his teammate. Then he sits up, and they just stop doing whatever tactic they were planning on doing. I don't know what they started with, but what they ended with is a whole lot of nothing with just some effort on the front there and some hurt legs. Well, Bora Hansgrohe get on the front and start driving down the descent because we're in the Slovenian region. And of course, Jan Tratnik and Primoz Roglic are both Slovenians. And Primoz Roglic is one of the hot favorites to win the Giro d'Italia, but he's still got to make up some time on the pink jersey of Del Toro. So Bora Hansgrohe's on the front. Probably just showing off for Primoz Roglic and Jan Tratnik right now. But they're dropping down the technical descents and narrow, twisty roads here. It's tight. So maybe it's a good idea to be on the front anyways. And it doesn't have anything to do with national pride. We start coming in about 27 kilometers to go. The breakaway riders up there holding about a minute gap still. And we look behind as we see the peloton coming across the bridge. Now we start understanding of how dangerous this course could be. It's still wet out there. I told you guys it started raining. They had some sunshine at times, but the roads are still completely wet. As they come across the bridge, and we start looking at the group of 3 going through all the technical corners where they had the right technical corner, and the peloton's got to make it through that too. So when we see the back of the peloton going through these corners, you can understand that it could be a hard 27 kilometers to go. Well, the front group of 3, still holding about a minute gap. They're flying through the corners because they're small and narrow. So this is an ideal course for 3 breakaway riders like Martin from Bardiani, like Mikro Maestri there from Polti, and of course Casper Asgreen, who's been in a couple moves here, but now he's trying to make this one stick as it's getting technical and nasty out there. We see these guys go through the border check there, and then all of a sudden we see the back of the peloton as it's coming to a screeching halt. That means, of course, there's a crash up front. We start getting the overhead view from the helicopter, and we see Lidl Trek is scattered all over with piles of bikes and bodies all the way in this narrow section of road, and we see Bora Hansgrohe riders all over, and it looks like Ineos with Egan Bernal's tied up there. We go back up front and we see that Visma bike's throwing down on the front. They made it through this crash. And we see the big guy, Wout van Aert, Bartleman, Simon Yates has made this front group, and Olaf Koy's made this front group with a few of the Movistar riders up there too. I'll call it about what looks like probably around 15 riders at this moment. But we don't see any pink jersey here either. But we do see Simon Yates that I pointed out. He's a GC threat right here when we started today's stage 14. So keep that in mind. Now we go back and we start getting some overhead pictures again, replays. And we see the pink jerseys held up in the crash. We didn't see him go down, but we see him held up, and we see that the front riders that I already pointed out was the Visma bike train that was leaving. Well, the pink jersey missed that, so he must be somewhere in between the front group and the guys who are still getting their bikes all situated right there. Now, Primoz Roglic, we'll see in the overhead shot that he's hit the ground on the cobblestone section there. And we see Lidl Trek riders are having all kinds of problems because we see Mads Pedersen in the purple jersey. There's sprint leader jersey here at the Giro d'Italia as he's on the right side of the road and he's looking back. You got to believe right now he's calling it a day. Now, he's already won 4 stages here at the Giro d'Italia. This is going to be a nasty finishing stage right now. So Mads Pedersen knows that this stage is about wrapped up because he missed the Visma bike train up front. we start looking at some other stories that happened in the crash. I'm going to point out Pale Bilbao, because Pale Bilbao is holding the bike of Tiberi. And Tiberi is not in the picture at this moment. That means that Tiberi must have gone down at some point in time, because Pale Bilbao is holding his bike. Then we look at Fran Miholovic there, that's Bahrain victorious. Fran Miholovic is holding Pale Bilbao's bike. So what bike is Tiberi on? I don't know what bike Tiberi on, and I don't know where Tiberi is at this moment, but we're still looking at the crash victims here as we see Trek Liddell riders scattered all over the place on the right side of the road there, but pause. Now we start going up a little bit further and we see that all of a sudden Cicconi's found, but he's about 500 meters in front of the crash on the left side of the road, and he's going to be sitting on the curb screaming out in pain. So he's completely hurting right now, as he's got two of his climbers around him, Patrick Conrad, and he's got Verona around him. But you start seeing the cars leaving the crash site there, and you know Cicconi's in trouble. We go back up to the KOM mountain that's starting now. We see the 3 leaders, and they're still holding about a 50-second gap to 1 minute on the Vismalisa bike train behind that now is starting to reach the second category climb here, the 700 meter, 7.5% climb. That Wout van Aert, Bart Lemon is on the front, and then we see the pink jersey. Somehow Del Toro's made it up into the front group. I don't know how he did it, but this front group's about 20 riders. You call it to be more accurate than 20 if you need it to be. But we start knowing with the GC favorites that made it in this front group is, like I said, the pink jerseys made it. Simon Yates, I already pointed out. Carapaz is in this front group. And when we start looking at the other favorites like Derek G, he's made this front group too. And we see Poole has made the front group. He's a little bit further outside the top 10, but he is in the top 20 and he's a climber. So I'll mention him being in this front group. As I mentioned before, Movistar's in this group, and Alpecin de Koenig have multiple numbers with their sprinter. Caden Groves in here and his lead out man, Ed Plankert's here, and Timo Kilic is in this front group too, as Vismalisa bikes trying to still close up the gap on the 3 leaders. They're bombing down the descent. Wout van Aert starting the descent, and you got to ask yourself at this moment, when we're talking about a 50-second gap on Wout van Aert and its wet, slippery roads, I start wondering right now if it's going to be a field sprint with 3 riders going up the road that have been out there all day long, but one's Casper Asgreen. If I back up the film all the way to 2023 at the Tour de France, stage 18, Casper Asgreen was in the break all day. That stage 2, they held it really close. Then my man Victor Campenaerts dropped back for his teammate, pulled his teammate up to that group, and they held off the peloton all the way to the finish of the stage that Casper Asgreen won on stage 18 of the 23 Tour de France. Now we fast forward as they've dropped down the descent, and they're still holding a pretty solid gap of about 40 seconds right now on the Vismalisa bike train back there that's going to start getting some help from Thibaut Kilic. Now when we go into 15 kilometers to go, we finally start seeing the third group, if you want to call it. First group being the 3, the second group Vismalisa bike and Del Toro. Now the third group is Primoz Roglic. We're going to see that the Bora Hansgrohe rider has some teammates with Jan Tratnik, who's been pulling on the front. Pulte was doing some work on the front. Ineos were doing some work on the front, because in this group with Primoz Roglic is Egan Bernal is in the group, and Ayuso's in this front group with Primoz Roglic, along with Michael Storer from Tudor Cycling. So with this group of about 31 riders, we still don't see Tiberi from Bahrain victorious. We go back up to the front as they're crossing the finish line here with 14 kilometers to go. We see the 3 leaders holding a 27-second gap. Just under half a minute right now for Casper Asgreen, for Martin Marcelusi, and for Mikko Maestri from Pulte. As these 3 riders pass the finish line for the last lap here with 14 kilometers to go. We see the second group coming through with the final lap here with Alpecin de Koenig on the front, Thibaut Kilic, Wout van Aert's in there, and Bart Lemon still on the front pulling like crazy with those 2 other guys. With this gap at 18 seconds, we go further back at about a minute. Primoz Roglic group's coming through. They're coming through hot. They're driving it on the front. Bora Hansgrohe's been interested. Pulte's been pulling on the front. Ineos still pulling on the front. Juan Ayuso sitting in this group because he has his race leader up front, Del Toro, sitting in that group. But remember, he's losing some time to Simon Yates up there, but he has got every reason to sit on this group because he has the favorite, the big-time favorite, Primoz Roglic in here, so Ayuso sitting on. Just behind that group, we'll go back about another 20, 30 seconds, and we'll see that it's Brandon McNulty driving it for UAE Team Emirates. Okay, and this group is Adam Yates. So they're driving it. Brandon McNulty's a threat on the general classification. He started top 10 here too, so that's why you see him pull it. Then the cars come behind the UAE train, and then we go back, and we finally found Tiberi back here. If we see Tiberi's group, he's got 3 teammates just in front of him, so 4 total from Bahrain and Victorious as they're trying to get Tiberi back up in this group. If I take you up into the front group, Bahrain Victorious does have a GC guy up there in Damiano Caruso, but they hadn't pulled him out. They did pull back one of their riders that was in that front group, Govacar, that went back and is pulling now for Bahrain Victorious Tiberi, so that's why they have 4 back there and not 3. With that in mind, Bahrain Victorious got to make up some time because they're about 45 seconds behind the Primoz Roglic group, which is about a minute behind the front group of 3. So Bahrain Victorious about 2 minutes, 1 minute, 45 seconds back from the front group of 3 right now, 14 kilometers to go. We go up front. We're going to start the last and final climb for the 3 leaders as they're reaching the climb. They're drilling it. Now I back the film up just a hair to 9 kilometers to go because I forgot something important as they're coming through the left turn. The front group of Visma Lease bike. Del Toro loses it going through this left turn with his left pedal pushing hard down on the foot. That allows the back wheel to loosen up a little bit on these wet cobbles, and he loses the back wheel as it slides out to the right. But Del Toro pulls it out and holds it upright and stays in this front group. Now they're reaching the final climb here with 1 lap to go up this climb with about 8 kilometers to go. And now we start seeing guys are blowing all over the place. As we see the 3 leaders up front, they're working hard. But we go back and look at the Visma Lease bike group. Bart Lamont starts to blow right now. When he blows, it's time for Thibaut Kielich on the front. Then Thibaut Kielich is going to blow from Albacine to Koenig and Wout van Aert. The big guy's got to go to work. Up front, though, when we look at the 3 leaders, Casper Asgreen for EF Education throwing in a huge effort because the gap has gotten down to about 17 seconds. And then Casper Asgreen's going to increase it by 1 or 2 seconds as he reaches the top of the KOM to call it 19 seconds. With the 3 leaders going over the top, it's a twisty technical descent. And then it's Wout van Aert leading over the group of Visma Lease bike with Olaf Koy trying to win today's stage 14 if Wout van Aert can bring it back. The other GC favorites, Del Toro hasn't pulled on the front. Simon Yates has still been sitting in reserve for Visma Lease bike at this moment. And when we look at Derek G, he hasn't pulled on the front either. Albacine de Koenig did some work a little bit later, but like I said, Thibaut Kielich is blown as Wout van Aert's dropping down the descent. We look back and we see the Primoz Roglic group. As we see Primoz Roglic group, Jan Tratnik blew as they started the climb. Then we see Ineos throwing in some hard attacks, and then Primoz Roglic and Egan Bernal, Ayuso are all at the front as they're going over the top of the KOM, but they're about a minute behind. So about 40 seconds behind the group up there of Visma Lease bike. We go further back, it's time to look at Bahrain Victorious Tiberi. Tiberi's going up this climb now, and he's catching the back of all the guys getting dropped. That was from the 3rd group. So Tiberi's in big time trouble here because with the road being this narrow, with the fans all over stacked, there's no way the riders in front of him can hear him. I've been in this situation before. It's a nightmare, guys. Even if you have good legs, you can't go fast because you're yelling at the riders in front of you that are dropping back on vacation now in stage 14 after they did some magnificent work for the teammates. But now they're dropping, they're blocking the road, and there's no way Tiberi can yell at the riders to tell them that he's passing by fast on the left or right of him, so you know he's going to lose some more time here on stage 14. We come back to the front group of 3 as they've dropped off the descent. We see Casper Asgreen is going solo. As he's going solo, you see the technical corners that he's coming out of, and the roundabout he's jumping over. And you see Martin Marsalusi back there from Bardiani and the Pulte rider, and they can't quite get together as Martin Marsalusi is struggling and starting to hurt. He looks over his right shoulder there. He wants some help from the Pulte rider, Mikro Maestri, but Maestri's got his head down because he can't do it. He's hurting. He'll still come to the front and try to do it, but we see the gap extend as we see Casper Asgreen's throwing down on the pedal with another bump still on this final circuit, and we're talking about 6 kilometers to go at this moment as Casper Asgreen has dumped off his 2 breakaway companions. But it's not over yet because the peloton's still behind him. Visma Lease bikes, Wout van Aert is on the front of the peloton and driving it, and the gap's at about 15, 17 seconds at this moment. So Casper Asgreen has dropped his 2 breakaway companions, but can the favorites back there, Visma Lease bikes, Wout van Aert and Olaf Koy, bring this all back together? Well, Wout van Aert's pulling on the front up this drag, holding the gap, and then Wout van Aert, the big guy, blows. When he blows, Movistar have to get on the front. Movistar gets on the front. I'll call this rider Cepeda. He pulls for a little bit, and then Cepeda blows. Now it's time for Simon Yates to get on the front. As Simon Yates is drilling on the front, he's throwing everything he can, but the time gap's not coming down as we're coming into about 3 kilometers to go, and we see Casper Asgreen going through this left turn as the road finally starts to somewhat flatten out here on stage 14 for Casper Asgreen from EF Education. He's drilling it with everything he's got. Simon Yates blows in the back, finally calls it a day. And now it's time for Edward Planker from Albacete to Koenig to go to work. So the gap is still at just under 20 seconds up there to Casper Asgreen as the group behind's wrapped up. Both of the breakaway companions that were normally up front with Casper Asgreen is going solo now. Casper Asgreen goes in the last final bends with 1 kilometer to go. Then he hits through the chicane. He gets ready to sit up and celebrate because he knows he's got enough of a gap at about 20 seconds on the Albacete to Koenig train back there that's out of the picture. So Casper Asgreen, after one look over his shoulder, decides it's time to start celebrating. Right now, he celebrates, lifts up for the Jesus pose with the head going all the way back, and then the arms go up in the air as he crosses the line for stage 14 victory, the second victory for EF Education, because if I remind you, it was his teammate, that was Carapaz, that threw in the first victory here for EF Education, and Carapaz is in that second group back there who did some marvelous teamwork back there, sitting third position most of the time as he's causing chaos and not allowing anyone else to come through. When Vismalisa bikes blew, Albacete to Koenig blew. Then we start looking at the back guys doing the sprint there for second and third. Caden Groves is hitting out near the line. He's going to carry it all the way to the line, but Olaf Koy is coming fast from the left side. Then Caden Groves is still going to win it with a bike throw to get second. So not win it, just win it for the sprint there in his group. Second's not first, right? Second's first loser. Caden Groves crosses the line for second. Olaf Koy rounds out the podium. But Simon Yates is in that front group. Del Toro, UAE Team Emirates, is in the front group. Carapaz is in that front group. And they're only 16 seconds behind the winner there, Casper Asgreen. Now, what's happening in the next group, the third group back there, Primoz Roglic group? Well, Primoz Roglic is driving it into the finish. He's been on the front a little bit with Egan Bernal. Not a ton, but a little bit. They rode the front near the finish of the stage. They're driving it across. They'll finish at 1 minute and 4 seconds behind the winning time. So they'll lose just about 50 seconds to the time up there of Simon Yates, Del Toro, and the pink race leaders jersey as they cross the line with Juan Ayuso, in that group. And Michael Storer. We look a little bit further back. We got to go back to about 2 minutes. And then we start seeing his Tibieri coming through at 2 minutes. Just behind him is going to be Adam Yates back there, losing a few more seconds off the Tibieri group that had Brandon McNulty in that group. So when we look at the top 10, guys, everything fluctuated in the top 10, but one thing stayed the same. First place, Del Toro is still holding the race leader's pink jersey. We look behind him in second place. That's Simon Yates in second place. We look at third. That's Ayuso, who lost some time to his teammate, but lost 1 place to Simon Yates. When we look at Primoz Roglic, he's back to about 2 minutes and 25 seconds, which, if I remember correctly, was about the time that he lost after stage 9 Strade Bianche, but he's still in 5th place of the general classification. Everything shuffled in the top 10. Carapaz was a winner today. Simon Yates was a winner. Del Toro, I already told you, was. But when we start looking at the big losers, Ciccone posted up that his Giro is finished here after he got on the bike. They'd finished crossing the line, but went over and got checked. He's got problems, so his Giro's over. So a big loss to Lidl Trek for losing Ciccone on today's stage. But shuffling all over the place. Magnificent stage of racing for the last 30 kilometers for sure. If you like the first 40, that was pretty good too when you look at all the tacks. And then go into the last 27 if you want to really be highlighted on today's stage 14 of the Giro d'Italia. Like and subscribe, guys. We're going into the mountain stage tomorrow. Does Primoz Roglic have the legs to take the race leader's pink jersey away from Del Toro? Well, it's not a summit finish, but it is a bit of a mountain stage. And they got 20 kilometers to go after the last climb. So it could be that Primoz Roglic is isolated at the top of that climb, but Pellizzari has looked fantastic throughout the Giro so far, so we'll have to see how it goes. Like and subscribe. I'll see you guys on the next edition. Hopefully Primoz Roglic, after his third crash here at the Giro d'Italia, has not lost more form, because there's no more form to lose if you're racing against Del Toro from UAE Team Emirates, who shows fantastic form, and his riding ability has increased every day here at the Giro d'Italia, form-wise, and of course tactic-wise, and of course bike handling-wise have been big jumps here for Del Toro. So like and subscribe. I'll see you guys real soon.
Te godì che suonava qua? Te godì?